Welcome back to AM Northwest. Our first guest grew up in a white middle-class neighborhood in the 60s up in Seattle, in the Seattle area. But it wasn't until nearly 10 years after her father's death that she learned a shocking family secret, one that would change her understanding of race and identity. Here to share her incredible story, we welcome the author of Legacy Lost, Passing Across the Color Line, Barbara Hilyer. Barbara, great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
I find your story so amazing. So let's first talk about when life changed for you, when you found out the secret and how. It was after your father died, about 10 years after.
Yes, 10 years after my father died. I was going through Seattle and I was having dinner with my stepmother, and I was going to go to a dermatologist because I had blotches on my skin. And she burst out crying and said, "I have something to tell you." And I had no idea what it was. I knew I wasn't adopted because I looked just like my dad.
Right.
And she told me then that she knew that my dad was had African-American heritage. It came from an African-American family, and that he had a sister who lived in Hawaii because she had met her once. And that's all she could tell me.
Now, okay, so what is your reaction at this point? Like, no, I don't believe it.
I believed it. I mean, I just said, wow.
Yeah.
I definitely believed her. I had no reason not to.
Yeah.
She was
Your mother
crying.
was white.
And my mother was white. My mother was Irish Catholic. And I had been very close with my dad. My parents were divorced, but they lived in close proximity. I stayed summers with my dad, weekends. We were close.
Right.
But he had died, and he died in tragic circumstances. He committed suicide when he was 56 years old. So the fact that there would be something else to the story wasn't really surprising to me. But my immediate reaction was just, I want to meet this aunt.
Yeah.
There was just no way that I was going to let this stop there.
But let's talk about your childhood, because as a child, what were you told about your heritage on your dad's side?
My dad said we were Mediterranean, and he said his mother was crazy and you didn't want to know her. And that was just it. My dad was very authoritarian in the old school ways that dads aren't now.
We're looking at a picture of your dad.
Yeah, that was my dad, young dad in the Merchant Marines.
Handsome.
Yes, he was very handsome, funny, gregarious, wonderful personality. But when he told you something, you didn't ask questions. So that was it. And he was big, and our life was full, and we didn't know that we were missing anything. My mom had Irish Catholic relatives in a farm in Illinois, and that's where we would go. And then with our dad, we had our dad.
As a child, did you notice anything different about you versus the other white kids?
No, I never thought anything.
Like you had a darker skin tone, right?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Did anyone ever think that you were black?
Yes.
You didn't?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Over time, there were numerous occasions where people assumed that I was black. I think the most outrageous one was when I was in college, and I went to college in Ashland in 1980, and there was a professor who taught social studies methods. I was studying to be an elementary school teacher, and he, in front of the whole class, said I was a credit to my race.
Wow.
And that just shocked me so much. I didn't know. It still didn't register
to me. Or to your people, I think he said.
Your people.
Yeah.
You're a credit to your people.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand that. And I went up to him and I said, you shouldn't be calling out anybody for anything. And what are you talking about?
Right.
But much later, I put it to, when I finally met my aunt, he was from the South. He was a southerner.
Oh,
and
so
for him.
And didn't the FBI also list you?
Yes, that's a different, longer story that I don't go into. But yes, I happened to be in a situation in Portland years ago when I worked at a bar and someone was arrested, and I was written up as a tall black woman in the FBI case.
Wow.
And again, I didn't know yet. I was in my late 20s then, or mid-20s, and I didn't know.
Let's go back now to you find out you have an aunt who lives on your dad's side, who lives in Hawaii, and you get to meet her, and what an incredible story unfolds about her.
Yes, well, that's the pièce de résistance of the whole story. I go now to Hilo, Hawaii, as they say, regularly, and have a group of friends connected through my connection with her. She was just this incredible woman who had left mainland United States in 1947 to go to Hawaii to raise her family because she couldn't get a job on the mainland.
Right.
And so at the time that the family split into different races, my dad started passing as white, which is actually very common, I find out, among light-skinned African Americans,
Right.
if they can, and the
and
opportunity.
they do it because
opportunity.
they have opportunity,
Yeah.
a chance to make more money.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah, it's not because you want to leave your whole family behind.
Right.
Obviously, it's tragic and it's horrible.
Right.
But let me finish with the Helene story. So she ended up, she was in politics there, and nobody ever really worried about what she was because Hawaii is very ethnically diverse.
Right.
And nobody, it never really came up for her. But she stayed connected with her family.
And she identified as black.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And also she ended up on the cover of Ebony magazine. We're
Yes.
not able to show that picture, but it was, I mean, to be on the cover of Ebony magazine.
Yes,
is
in
pretty
1963,
impressive.
she
Yeah.
was lauded as being the first official in Hawaii since the Queen had been deposed in 1893. And so her big issues were fighting gender inequality, she said, in Hawaii, more so than racial inequality, although it would have been racial inequality, you know,
Right.
in the mainland United States. And I think I wanted to say something else, that originally when I started writing this book, I really thought I was writing it for an audience of anyone. But the more I did research and the more I went to various places and met people, black people and just all, you know, educators and college people and all that, I realized it's really not a story for black people because everyone who's black knows somebody who's
Right,
passed.
right.
It's white people who say, really? You
Yeah.
can do that? And how did that happen? And yet it did happen.
Yeah. And your brother, your older brother, very successful in law, as was your father, as was his father.
As was his father also.
Right.
4 generations.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Now your brother looks very white.
Yes.
You say.
Yes.
Because you both visited the South to visit family, and
Yes, yes. We brought the family together eventually. I met this cousin who lives in Washington, D.C. He's also a lawyer. It's a long family of lawyers.
Yeah.
And a little bit older than I am. And he was very welcoming, and he really opened up doors. Every time I started to do research, I needed somebody to open up more doors
Right.
because I didn't really know where I was going. But he was my grandmother's sister's son. So he knew all about the family. They had never passed. They had lived in Washington, D.C. They had African-American heritage. They knew it way back.
Yeah.
And in fact, I remember his wife said to me, Barbara, you have to know your people. And I was like, I'm trying.
there you are. You have a book event, and that is Monday at Annie Bloom's Books.
Yes.
On Capitol Highway in Portland. We're going to put all the information for you on our
7
website
o'clock.
at KTON. 7 o'clock. The book is fascinating. Legacy Lost, Passing Across the Color Line. Barbara, thank you so much.
Thank you for
Appreciate it.
having me.
All right, we'll be right back with more AM Northwest. Don't go away.